There was an article yesterday in the paper about Coca-Cola reducing their spending above-the-line media from 80% down to 60%. And I think that sites like yours are definitely showing that trend and supporting that trend. You've been at Shop Free now, you've been at the business now, coming into your 5th year. What are some of the lessons you've learned that you could impart to perhaps a competitor to create some real competition in the marketplace?
Well, yeah, there probably is a few lessons that we've learned over the time. Probably the first one was that I think when you start a business, it's amazing how many people are at you to spend your money. It seems like there's always a knock on the door for you to spend money in different areas. And I think learning to say no is a very important thing. We said yes to a few different advertising campaigns that, one, didn't deliver us the results, and two, even if they did deliver us the results, we actually didn't really have a way to measure those. So I think learning how to make sure that your advertising is very accountable is a very important thing, and something that we learnt. And I don't think we got burnt too badly, but we did spend some money that would have rather spent in other areas. I think at different times I've tried to introduce different business partners into the business, and again haven't really been burnt by any of those, but business partnerships are very hard to manage. They're a bit like a marriage, I think, only more intense. So I think
you spend more time at work than you do at home.
You do, yeah, and you've got money involved and all that sort of thing, and it's very easy if someone's not pulling their weight for you to start resenting things. And so I think that the choice of business partners is really critical, and I think people rush into different shareholder relationships a bit too quickly. Probably one of the other things that I've learned is to just really make sure that with everything you do that it's measurable. And I think that I think early days we thought, oh, this is quite good, but we didn't really measure it. And I think there are other ways to create successful, to get more traffic to your website. And business partnerships or traffic swaps is one of the things that we do a lot of. We have a number of campaigns on Shop Free where we don't get paid for them, but in return we have a return link from that company's website. Now we measure that each month and make sure that the amount of traffic that we're sending them is about the same amount of traffic that we're receiving. And we've done a number of those deals, and they've been very good for us. Instead of actually spending your money, we just swap traffic with companies, and there are lots of site owners that are very happy to do those sort of deals. And you know what? After a couple of months, if you don't feel like if you feel like you're getting the raw end of the deal, that's all right. You can just just finish the relationship. You haven't spent any money. You haven't really wasted too much time, and you can just move on. Sounds like
you could teach the US government a little about trade deficits.
Oh, indeed, indeed. So they're having a few problems at the moment. So
speaking of which, you've got a very big year this year. I think very exciting year coming up.
Yeah, April 10, moving over to the United States. I was over there a couple of months ago. And we've launched the website over there. It's been going for about a year and a half now, but sort of realised that they're just mad samplers over there. We find that in any marketplace where there's a lot of, or even any product segment where there's a lot of competitors, then there happens to be a lot of product sampling. And this is because it's much harder to stand out from the crowd with above-the-line advertising if there's so many different players in the marketplace. So sampling is probably one of the most effective ways to actually develop that closer relationship with the consumer. And in a competitive market, sampling works really well. And obviously the US is probably the world's most competitive market. So, yeah, moving over to San Francisco, biting the bullet. I'm excited on one hand and scared stiff on another. But I do remember back in, I think it was about 1996 or 97, I had a meeting with a very scared Evan Thornley from Look Smart down in a tiny little office in Melbourne, and he said to me, Brendan, he said, if Look Smart doesn't go so well over in America, if the launch doesn't go well, he said, I'm not sure I'm going to have enough money to actually come home. So he actually did have enough money to come home, and he did quite well out of it. So yeah, I'm sort of thinking this is one of these decisions where if I look back on it, I'll know it'll be a great decision, but still doesn't make me any less scared to go over there and do that. I was lucky enough to speak at Internet World in Los Angeles last year, and I think I had this attitude, well, can Australians sort of really cut it over there? Am I going to get eaten alive? And I found that while that they were a little bit sceptical at first. After I hosted lunch and I gave my speech, they were really warm and friendly people, and they love Aussies over there. So
they certainly do.
It's not too bad. And of course, with things like Russell Crowe and Naomi Watts and Nicole Kidman, all these actors over there, Australia really still is the flavour of the month, and they honestly like hanging out with Aussies. There is that attitude though that they like being around Australians, but perhaps they still don't take us quite as seriously in business. So I still think you need to earn your credibility and earn your stripes over there. But once you've done that, they're very open people and do love Australians.
If you had it all to do again, but back in 1999, what would you do? What's the one thing you'd do differently?
One of the things I'm glad I didn't do was a backdoor listing. We had the opportunity to list on the stock exchange, and I'm pretty glad we didn't do that. In the end, I decided not to do it because I thought, what would we do with the money? Well, maybe we'd grow a sales force, but I probably had this feeling we'd probably just waste it like a lot of the other guys did on a nice flash office and a big, flashing neon sign. Probably I wouldn't do too much differently. I think I would probably some of the employees we had that we employed to build various aspects of the website, I think I would have used more contractors. I think it's much easier to manage those relationships and even have some employees on a contract before you perhaps offer them a full-time gig. Unfortunately, in Australia, when you have an employee, it is really hard to get rid of them if it's not working. So I'm much more hesitant about hiring people full-time these days than what I was. Probably other things that I would do differently was I'd probably go to the US earlier. I think there was still a big opportunity for Australians to make it over there. And the other thing I think is you can learn so much by being overseas. And every time I would make a trip to the US, I would come back more excited and more rejuvenated. The other thing I did was I think at different times I hired salespeople, where I actually sort of realised that as CEO, I really should be the number one salesperson for the company. And I think that if you're a CEO and you're not that person, you probably should really get a CEO that is that number one salesperson for the company. And I think a lot of CEOs get too caught up in the numbers and actually don't realise that their number one job is actually is to get out there and make sure that they sell their company.
Particularly when it's your own, you should be its greatest evangelist.
Yeah, it is always hard when you found a business and it's your baby and you've if you like almost grown it out of your bedroom, to find other people that are as passionate about the business as yourself. And it is hard to get that expectation for employees because of course to them it's more like a job, and it is hard to get them as passionate about the business as you.
Who's taking over in Australia then?
In Australia we've appointed Mike Mackay, who's currently sales director, to move on to run the Australian website. Mike's the former director of promotions for the Australian radio network, so he has a lot of experience in sampling and working with clients to come up with campaigns. So we're looking forward to him, really pressing this market in 2004. There's no doubt, and especially talking to a lot of other online salespeople, as I did at Christmas parties at the end of last year, there seemed to be a lot more money for online in the last couple of months of last year. So we're looking to 2004 to actually be a really good year. 2003 was okay, but it didn't really start off very strongly. And I remember, the previous Christmas, the money seemed to run out a lot closer to Christmas. This year we're still booking campaigns, a week before Christmas. So it was a really good sign for online. And there are a lot of companies now, a lot of large companies are now starting to become a lot more committed to online. You mentioned Procter & Gamble before. They've always been fairly strong online. We haven't seen so much from Unilever in the past. Nestle seems very committed to the online channel and use it all the time for research. They've just done a major campaign where they're giving away samples in return for people filling out a sort of 20 or 30 question survey. So they seem very committed. So there's gradually more and more of these larger companies with larger budgets spending online. Traditionally, unfortunately, it has been the sort of smaller companies, but the larger companies, larger corporates are really starting to jump online and be very committed to it as a channel.